We've literally just we've got two young lads that one's travelling the world at the moment, but he started with us literally because he was playing on the pitch next to us, and we were short, so we just dragged them across, and they've just been coming ever since.
Oh wow!
Could you get a Sauce team together? A Sauce.
We have
side?
had
We do, and often there's
we're
like
awful.
Sauce V, you'll have a 5v5, and for years we lost every game. But
Yeah, I think we've won one game, haven't we?
no, more than that now.
Really?
We've got a QA called Matchex, who's a skillful footballer, so he was a great recruit.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that what you look for
he's
nowadays?
picked us up.
Interests football. All right, you're in.
Your CV seems to be predominantly work based, but I'm really interested in your football.
Don't worry about the suit, just bring your boots.
Yeah. So welcome to the podcast, Jon Polling and Jim Wardlow. Who wants to go first in terms of introductions? Jim, give us a bit about yourself.
Sorry, Wardlaw.
Wardlaw,
We'll just
sorry.
get that in the first.
That's a good point.
So, Jim, I'm Chief of Business Development at Sause and one of the co-founders. So I came up to Hull for university in about 2000, no years after that. So worked a few jobs around the city in a couple of small web agencies, and then turned freelance. Got to know Jon through the tech scene at the time. He used to put on an event on Prinny Ave. And then when C4DI sort of came along, we were sort of numbers 3 and 4 or 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And we both run our own little startups, but we're also working on a lot of projects together, freelancing. And at some point, we decided it would be a good idea to join forces and team up with another couple of guys, both called Matt, to start
Handy.
Sause. Yeah.
So when was that? When did C4DI start? Because I think I remember it.
Well, the beta was, so Sauce has been going 7
7.
years,
Wow.
and it was about another year, and it must be about another 2 years on top of that. The C4DI beta was a thing, so yeah, it must be around 10 years.
Okay. So you've been going 7 years, and we'll get into you in a second, John. But what size is Sauce now in terms of employees? How many people you got?
From July, we'll be around 40, I think.
Yeah.
40. Wow, that's quite some scale up.
Yeah, it was really, we had a phase sort of, obviously when we first set up, it was just like the four of us.
It was never meant to happen. It was just
It
meant
was-
to be a nice,
Little boutique.
Never
a
is.
nice little boutique for us to write some nice code and
then
work on projects we want to.
We were busy and we thought we just need a couple more, and then a couple more came, and then we had a couple more, and then we had a couple more, and it's just, yeah, there was one particular year, it was just going like crazy, getting more hires. But yeah, and COVID didn't really change an awful lot for us in that sense either. We still, we onboarded a new employee in the middle of lockdown, and that was a weird experience for us. But
I joined here during lockdown. I mean, well, day 3 of me joining, sent everybody home on lockdown.
Wow.
That was weird.
yeah, how did you find that in terms of just adjusting? Because
Yeah, odd. I mean, I'm pleased I had those 3 days just to shake hands and show people that I was real. But then, then it was weird just trying to, especially when you're managing a team as well,
Yeah.
from home, not knowing them. It's difficult, but I'm pleased to be back in the office now. It's good.
yeah, we had to just sort of, main challenge was working out what to do with all the hardware. We had to get around to all the various homes
Yeah.
and stuff. So we had sort of people playing postman.
But
Quite
like,
often.
tech businesses probably were better set up than most, I think, to deal with
If
that.
we can do it, no one's going to be able to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, brilliant. So, thank you, Jim. Jon, give us a bit of a potted history of yourself then.
Well, I grew up in the same neck of the woods as you.
Yep.
So sunny Boston, Brexit capital of the world.
Just if we do have listeners that don't live in Lincolnshire or South Yorkshire, not Boston in the US.
yeah, which everyone always gets. In fact,
yeah.
I went to a cricket match the other day, and somebody couldn't make it. He was off into Boston, and everyone was like, "Boston where?" And they were all immediately like, "Massachusetts." He was like, "No."
Sunny Lincolnshire.
Yeah, I got it all the time at uni as well. It's like,
Yeah.
anyway, there is also New York near there as well.
There is, weirdly, which is
Yeah.
very different to the,
Yeah,
the
tiny.
Manhattan, New York. So.
Sorry. Ended up going to Aston Uni. Met my wife from there, and she was from Hull, so ended up here. Worked in the tech scene in Hull for a long time now. When I originally came up here, I was doing a lot of freelancing, and kind of realised I needed to start a whole new network moving from Birmingham to Hull. So worked at a company called the White Agency, do a lot of marketing, or did do a lot of marketing for Swift Caravan Group, and then met people like John Moss, John Connolly, and started to do sort of some bits and pieces around sort of whole digital. As Jim said, I ran the whole digital developer meetup for quite a few years, which was great, but also really hard work, just asking people to come and do like talks. You have to really twist people's arms. There's loads of really good people out there who've got some really good, interesting things to talk about, but just trying to encourage them to come and do those talks is hard work. But
You know the feeling.
I never ever got Jim to do one.
Really?
Yeah, he always said he'd do one as long as he had his guitar in front of him. But,
Stage fright, yeah.
So and then sort of met Jim through those events. We kind of did lots of freelance bits and pieces together, and kind of it grew from there into 40 employees, I guess.
So you're both coders at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you spend much time writing code nowadays, or is that many years behind you?
No, I've definitely written lines of code this year.
Yeah?
I shipped quite a small little MVP for a client recently. So I don't think Jim and I will ever truly let go.
No, I had a good streak recently, about 60 days of not opening up VS Code, but I broke that a couple of days ago.
Do you miss it?
I do and I don't. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay. So, I mean, growing a business to 40 employees in 7 years, as we know, that's some growth actually. And you say it's not something that you kind of deliberately planned. Is that fair?
Yeah. Originally, it was just the business was just to enable us to work on interesting projects.
Yeah.
And we'd focus on like IoT tech and things like that, which sort of left some of the more boring jobs on the table there because it wasn't really what we were interested in. But then the demand, it was around, I guess, the iPhone, the application of everything, internet apps and all of that. And there was a lot of design and marketing agencies who didn't have that skill in-house. So inevitably that work was out there if you wanted it. And yeah, we sort of did.
Yeah, I always felt fairly confident as well. Like I worked with a lot of marketing agencies. I knew how they worked. I knew what they needed. So I was quite comfortable going and talking to people like that. But also just, being based in C4DI was really, really helpful for us. The fact that one of our earliest clients was Siemens Gamesa, or Siemens as they were at the time. We built a HR system for them. We wouldn't have had that opportunity to us if if they weren't already sort of aware of C4DI, talking to people at C4DI, it definitely helped open that door for us. And then I guess a similar situation with Ideal Heating, boilers as they were at the time. Who would have looked at four clowns in a room and said, you can build us an IoT system, right? So, but we did. We built them an IoT system. They'd tried to do it for about the previous 18 months with a different agency. Got nowhere. Within 3 months, we'd got sort of proof that we could basically send a command from a mobile phone app to their boiler and turn it on and off. I remember the demo, showing it to them. They were like, "This is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. We have not, we've waited so long to get to this stage."
That must have been a great feeling when you get customers in the room or prospective customers in the jaw dropping moment where they're like, "That's brilliant. We're off and running now."
It's weird. We always knew we could do it as well. Like we knew we'd get the project, and we knew we could definitely do what was required of the work. Honestly, it's just pushing data around different network points. Ultimately, it's not rocket science. We're not building super complex things. It's moving data around and just understanding how to do that efficiently.
So, have you found a bit of a kind of niche, I guess, that you guys operate in? What's your sweet spot in terms of software development?
Oh, well, I'd say we're kind of finding it because we suffered originally from just picking all the interesting projects, not focusing on a domain.
Yeah.
But so we kind of have different teams now who are specialists in different domains. So we've got like the heating area, and the teams that are working on that have been working on it 2 or 3 years now. So they're kind of like experts of that. Other side, we've got a lot of work in logistics. So a lot of knowledge has grown there. As Jon said, HR and shift management and things like that. So, but we're trying to sort of focus a little and start looking for work more like what we've already done, so we can, I guess, bring more value to the customer.
And where does your work come from? You said you're responsible for business development. Is that
I
right?
am now, yeah, not always, but yeah.
That's quite a career change from being a coder back in the day to knocking on doors, winning business,
still learning.
signing deals.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. We've been to quite a few events recently. So we went to Multimodal. I just spent 2 weeks camped up in the NEC.
Fun.
It's a lovely city, Birmingham, but I've had enough for a while. So that was really interesting. So just sort of going around, because we've built this system for Nestle and GXO, who are two giants in the industry. But then we sort of just left it there a little bit. We maintained it and we added to it, but we didn't really go out there to see who else had similar problems. So we started doing that, and oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot of work out there. Yeah, it was really surprising. From that industry, so there's a lot of technology in certain places, but in other times, it's just spreadsheets still, or even notes and bits of paper. Things like the warehouse, they seem to be a lot more automated. You've got robots flying around there.
Yeah.
Amazon has definitely helped that, but outside the warehouse, not so much. Especially when you have lots of different companies working together, so you just haven't got one company running all the trucks into a yard. You've got 20 different companies, so you can't rely on them all having the same sensor on their truck or hardware and stuff like that.
How did you find, obviously a couple of weeks in Birmingham, going to the NEC, probably tired of it by the end, but how did when I met you two, we were visitors to an exhibition, and obviously by the sounds of it, you've now gone to the other side and you've been exhibitors. How or tours even.
That was our research and development trip.
Exactly. How did you find it on the other side of the fence, if you will, and what were the pluses or the takeaways, positive and negative?
Take a stool would be the one thing we learned from. We had to steal a couple in the end, just to give their legs a break. But no, we learned. It was just really interesting speaking to people and hearing about all the different problems that they've got, but also trying to find out early how much does that problem cost them, because everyone will come up to you with loads of problems about what's going wrong with their job and how technology could solve it. But a lot of the time, it's not worth solving it because either it doesn't happen often enough, or it's going to be very expensive to find a solution. So I do love having those conversations, and I won't just drop it when I find out there's no budget there or anything. But at the same time, I think it's important that you try and sort of steer those discussions to something that's achievable and not just some sort of Black Mirror pipe dream.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? Like how often people go, we'll just get tech to do it, and they've got no concept of just technology is expensive. There's no two ways about it. Having a tech solution sunk is never going to be a cheap option up front. It's going to cost you a fair wedge. Long term, great. You'll get investment. You'll get your return. But it's you've got to accept when you're going into a project, you're going to spend definitely.
And it costs in their time as well. Like the way we work, it's agile. There will be a dedicated team on that client. But the product owner, their side, is one of the most important roles. And if they don't have the time or the agency in their own company to make decisions or find information out,
tough project.
It turns into a slog.
And do you see it as like a full-time role for that product owner for that organisation, or is it?
Depending on the size of the project, but the really good ones, it's a full-time role. And if they're spending a lot of money as well, it warrants it. But there are projects which are not so big in scale that perhaps it can be 50% of their role.
But if you're talking like a year-long, 2-3 year-long project, and it's not a full-time product owner, you're in trouble.
You've got to really drop them into that scrum team.
That is their role. And we've had loads of success with that. With Ideal, that's what they've done. They've hired people especially for that role, and built up a really good relationship with our teams. And it is just a fully sort of collaborative process.
I was just about to say, collaboration is the key, isn't it? And some of our larger clients, if you will, where we've had that product owner nigh on full time, or certainly full time, as in they've got maybe 2 or 3 projects, but that's their focus. That's where we probably had the most efficient and streamlined delivery, because you've got someone at the other end who's not worried about I've now got to do month end or whatever, from our finance side of things. there's less distraction in it. It's fully focused on, right, I need to drive that, and I'll go back into the business and say, I need you to test this, feedback, etc. Then we get the feedback to be able to work on the snag list, if you will.
Hi guys, just jumping in, I want to talk about one of the services we offer, which is robotic process automation, also known as RPA. That is software that replicates human behavior. So if you've got people downloading spreadsheets, attaching them to emails, going on portals, downloading information, moving data around, all that stuff is perfect for a robot. So if that's interesting, get in touch, let's have a chat, let's see if we can help. Enough from me, back to the conversation. I think 70-80% of the success or not of a project is dependent on how engaged the stakeholders are from the client side. Yeah. And I think you realise that quite quickly, whether we're in a good position or not, or whether we've got some more work to do. You were given a nodding kind of look as Jim was talking about, you've got to understand whether it's really worth it for the client. So why? Explain that.
Well, very much as Jim said, because ultimately everyone and Jon about, it's technology to start with. The upfront cost is sizable, or can be sizable, but ultimately when I go on my side of, from the sales side, is understanding the problem, but then understanding the worth, the cost of the problem versus the cost of the solution, and when are you going to get that payback. And one of the things I focus on, because I'm not very technical, is like, a couple of things I do is manage the process, the discovery, the sales process, but also build the business case and build it as quickly as possible to ultimately lose quickly. I'd rather have a meeting and at the end of it, and I had one recently where I was like, do you know what? Probably cobble something together, not in a very professional, but we can put something together. Is it going to be efficient for you? No. Is it going to be costly? Yes. Is it big enough? Is your problem big enough for all of that? No. And thanks. Really, the best thing is that I've learned a bit about your business, but your time is valuable, my time is valuable. I think we're better off just in the nicest sense going our different ways, because ultimately you can put a lot of, especially probably from your guys' side of things, because you're building everything in the main from scratch. You potentially don't want to get way down the line, demos, proof of concepts, and they go, do you know what, obviously you're going to find out beforehand, but actually I've only got 100 grand, and you're like, I need 4 times that for us to even get to an MVP per se. For me, it's very important from the outset, from my first appointment to my discovery appointment, to actually start building what are the pains, how often, and then in my head start building the costs up, and then getting that qualified by the prospect for them to go, do you know what, actually, this is costing me, I'm just about to employ 2 more people. All right, well, pause on the thought of employing 2 more people, because potentially we can put something in that will take care of the 2 additional employees. No, we all want to employ people, but we also want efficiency as well. So on that, Steve, the business case, the building of that, losing quickly or developing it, positively with everyone in aligned with the fact that it's going to cost in the regions of this is where we've had our success, where we've got transparency early doors.
Key part of our sales process, just understand that business case as quickly as possible, and if it doesn't float, tell them. And if things change in 2 or 3 years' time, businesses grow, and that pain might have grown to a point where the ROI is there, and hopefully you've got some credibility off the back of having that honest conversation up front. So,
but just on that, sorry, Steve, when you have those sort of discussions with either your clients or your prospective clients, what's the typical payback that period that they're wanting from? Because I'm getting some really varied ones. Some it's like less than 12 months, and I'm like, whoa, moon on a stick. And then others it's like, we'll do it over 3 years, 4 years.
I mean,
it's about the same minutes.
We just get a huge range, right? When you think about like investing in an IoT project, a connected boiler is not, it's not just our costs. It's not the development costs. It's the cloud costs. The everyday running costs there. It's the building of a boiler and all the equipment that goes into that. There's the hardware, because we don't do hardware. We're just doing with the software and the integration. Right. The hardware team, and all the runs of sort of hardware that need building for that connected device. It's big money that gets invested. It's a serious project when you get involved in sort of IoT. So you're looking for it's going to be a long-term turnaround in terms of getting some of your value back. But on the flip side, obviously, pretty much every customer nowadays wants a connected boiler, right? You expect it in your house. You need to be able to nest everything, and Tado and all the others kind of really kickstarted it. But you've got no choice. You've got to do it. And likewise with obviously the fact that boilers themselves as systems are coming to an end, things like heat pumps coming down the line, and all the other kind of smart tech that's out there around sort of heating your house. You need, you're going to have multiple devices in terms of energy in your house. It's not just going to be a boiler anymore. It's going to be your heat pump. You're going to have your solar panels for heating your hot water, etc. It's going, there's a lot of investment that's going in there in the industry at the moment, because they know that's what the people are going to need. And if you don't do it, you're going to lose your business, right? It's really quite important for those boiler manufacturers to be moving with the times. So you almost just don't get a choice as well. It's either invest or watch someone else take over your business.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Where else have you seen IoT being used? And I guess that's because that's quite a legacy business industry, isn't it? Boilers been going for a long time, and then suddenly technology comes in and kind of disrupts that. Have you done that in other sectors, or has that been mainly focused?
Yeah, there's a lot of it around tracking and tracking assets. There's quite a few projects we've done tracking high-ish value items around hospitals and places like that. Mm-hmm. We also worked on a project a few years ago now, which was basically to turn your phone into a satellite phone.
Wow. Okay. What's the use case for that?
It's
going
trekking, going exploring,
right.
into, not underwater. We'll leave that.
Yeah.
the problem, obviously, that market's gone now because your iPhone can connect to a satellite and make an SOS call. But this was 5 years ago?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It was interesting. It was a big rugged piece of kit that you put your phone in, almost like a case that had the antenna and connected via the USB port on your phone, and then would connect to, give you a very, very low internet connection. But you could browse Twitter on it.
Well, we switched that functionality off, but you could definitely send text messages to home. You can make phone calls. The really sort of low bandwidth stuff that you just need to do in terms of just keeping in contact with people. Satcoms is really expensive. Again, it's like the cost to an individual of having a SIM card is really high, and each sort of piece of data that you send is not cheap. So you've got to really kind of compress that data as heavily as possible before sending it. But yeah, as Jim said, then Apple come along and just destroy that market. So it's
as
awkward, isn't it? But yeah, asset tracking is a massive thing, because obviously even we've done a project for GXO, XPO as they were, around tracking your actual, your supermarket green trays. Mm-hmm. Those all need tracking. They all need washing. You need to know where they are at any moment in time. Are they, a supplier, so at a farm? Are they in transit somewhere? Have they been washed? Have they gone through the wash cycle? So GXO run all that process, and they needed a piece of software to basically help them track those numbers, because it's millions of trays. Turns out what you don't need is an individual tracking device. You just need to think creatively around how you're recording that data. We looked at some really nice small kind of little tracking stickers, which would basically suck energy out of sort of things like Bluetooth devices around them and things like that, so they could every so often just transmit a bit of data out. And it was quite impressive seeing that. And I don't think that is completely dead as an idea for GXO, but it's the cost for the value of those trays, right?
Trays like £1 each, are they? Something
you don't build a £100 chip in a £1 tray.
Exactly. The lowest price you get the stickers was 5 or 10p, so it's still it's 10% of the cost of it.
Yeah. And people just chuck them around and they go, they're going to get wet and
get washed as well, so they've got to be waterproof.
So we just worked with them on how do you track this information without tracking it in a hardware sense. So, but that was quite a different challenge, a non-IoT related challenge, but it could have been an interesting IoT project as well. But it's been pretty successful. Kind of in with Argos, doing some stuff with them there.
So you're in with some proper kind of blue chip clients. How has that happened? Because that's difficult, isn't it? You don't just ring up Boots and go, "Can I come and sign up Argos," or whatever you said, and XPO, and you don't ring these companies up and say, "Can I come and talk to you?" Or do you?
Well, no. Well, I'm trying it now.
Yeah.
But originally that connection, it just comes through word of mouth. So we did the like a yard management solution for Nestle. GXO run the site for them, or one of the sites, and then I think just sort of word of mouth. They had this other project. Somebody was overseeing both of those projects and sort of built some trust up there. So they thought, we'll let you have a go at this as well.
And how do you find working with clients of that size? Because presumably you work with...
This is going on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
We can edit it out, but depending on what you say. But is it different working with the Argos and GXO versus, I guess, a small manufacturing company?
Yeah, and it definitely took us a little bit of time to get used to. There's a lot more process. And to start with, you're like, screw the process. We just want somebody who can say yes or no.
Yeah.
But then, as you learn, like I'm sure everyone does, that's there for a reason. And although it slows things down, it does also stop disasters happening. And one person at a company, with an agenda just causing chaos everywhere, it traps all of that stuff. So, in general, we found it good, and it works well with our agile process as well. As long as we can sell it up front that this is how you're not getting fixed deadlines and absolutes on feature sets and stuff like that. You can have one of them, but it's agile, so it's going to be your product owner and our team who are going to be generating those milestones and making decisions on how to ship to a deadline, but perhaps choosing what to ship.
There is definitely an education piece that has to happen at the beginning of those kind of working with those clients, and then it's a continual education process because they kind of want to fight the process of it and go, but we need this, and we need this contract signing that states exactly these things are going to be delivered. And it's like, this is what we told you up front. This is why you're going to work with us and why we're going to deliver for you, and we're going to deliver the things that you need. And the easy comeback with stuff like that is like, this is a 2-year project. Tell me right now what you need in 2 years' time as a business. No one can answer that question, right? You've got ideas, hopes, but in terms of writing a spec for a piece of software that lasts even 12 months is a crazy notion. So work with us. We'll keep coming to see you. We'll keep seeing how your customers use the software that we've built in terms of MVPs and things like that, get feedback, and then we'll work with you to go, right, what's the next phase look like? So they get on board with it eventually, but there's a journey to be had there.
And like you said, an education piece as well, because we come across that, don't we? You kind of say, right, it's going to be this amount of time, or slightly different for us because we're not necessarily building it from scratch. We've got building blocks, if you like. But for me, it's how do you feel that you may have lost projects because people haven't actually, you're both looking at each other, haven't actually wanted to understand that, it is a fluid process and it can go left, right, left, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you say lost, but probably haven't. I mean, in the sense of it would have been an absolute disaster. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, and there are even cases where the people we're speaking to will admit, look, we know this is a bad decision, but we just have to go with somebody who can sign a bit of paper that guarantees it, and
see you in 12 months.
They can't guarantee it.
And quite often they'll be like, we really enjoyed working with you on this process, so we'll probably be back in touch in 12 months when this fails.
We have worked on a project for an unnamed client on this instance, which I think we've pitched for about 3 times, and it was always like, we'll go with someone else, and eventually the work came to us after it had not worked out the other 2 or 3 times. So it's an expensive way of finding that out, right?
And very much so. How do you go about that education piece? So you want to understand what the problem is, what the desire is. So once you've understood the problem and you've understood how strong the desire is, and in your head's how you're going to approach it, obviously the next piece is around, right, got it, can help you. We're going to have to work like this.
So
how do you go about that?
We do play the portfolio card a bit, in the sense of, well, we've done it with these companies. You know, they're either bigger than you or on the same level of you. So we have to go slightly big-headed on that front.
Right.
But that helps, right? Because you go, well, we've got a proven track record of delivering for Nestle or GXO or whoever it is. And that is it is a door opener, and it does mean people are going to sit down and go, right, these guys have delivered, big projects for these big companies. They must have some idea what they're doing by now, right? So that helps, and then it's a case of talking them through some of the examples of things that went well in projects, not so well in projects, and why. And by that time, they kind of they can start to see what we're saying. They start to understand it, and they're definitely saying the right things. Whether they kind of action them is another thing, but
it's more and more that there are people in the business who understand it, don't need the education, who just need a little bit of ammo to back them up internally as well.
Okay.
So if you can find those people in the company, those champions who can, and give them the information that they need to convince their side.
We'll quite often offer to do a really small MVP as well. Let's prove that we can deliver something for you quickly, and then take it from there. It's a small piece. You're not having a massive outlay up front. Gives you a bit of something of what you need. See if we can deliver. See how it goes.
Yeah. What sort of time period does that look like? Are we talking two-week sprint? And
it could. Yeah. In fact, that little project that you did recently was it was a really good example of they had a business problem where I won't go into details just in case, but basically they needed an employee to do an action on an app, but that employee wouldn't be either in the network coverage, so wouldn't be able to do it. So we needed to kind of allow somebody in the office to spoof what they should have done when they got a text message or something like that. So, and that was costing them about $24,000 a month.
Wow. They were missing a bunch of KPIs basically. So we were like, okay, we think we can help you here, and we basically looked at a certain mobile app, grabbed the network requests from it and worked out how to work with this API that was completely undocumented, and just built them a web app that did what they needed it to do from their offices, not from relying on somebody with a mobile app at that moment in time. So it's made
that was a nice quick one that could be turned around and really provide instant value to them. They weren't too bothered about feature sets for this thing. It just needs to do that one thing.
It's also gives you you earn instant credibility in 2 weeks. So they've got a massive business pain from the figures you mentioned. 2 weeks you've gone, how does that work? And they're like, yeah, that's ace, and now we want to talk about X, Y, and Z. So, sorry, Steve, just very, very quickly then, because when you get that first inquiry or you make contact with someone, they go, do you know what, that's really quite interesting. From that first conversation through to maybe that proof of concept or the project, going into build, what's the sort of typical timelines? And I'm guessing it's not uniform, but
I'd say sometimes it will be a month, sometimes it'll be 6. There's not a lot in the middle.
Right. Okay.
It's either very quick, let's get in it right. This is the problem. This is the long-term solution that we're looking for, but here's something we can do pretty quickly, and let's get going. If we've got availability and all that, obviously, but if it's the education piece and stuff like that, then it sort of 6 months, something like that, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, that seems about right.
It's 40 employees, but effectively it's 5 teams. So it's not that, and a lot of them are on retained work. So it's low volume on these turnovers. So you get to have a lot of conversations, but you don't need them all to come in. So you can afford to, just take them all on a little journey.
Yeah. I guess that's difficult to scale up and scale down, because if you've got lots of long-term projects running and then you win anher big project where you need a scrum team, how do you do that? Do you suddenly spring up?
You make that project you make it take 6 months, and then by the time you're there.
Okay, me again, just jumping in to talk about one of the processes that we often get asked to automate, which is the processing of supplier invoices, also known as accounts payable automation. So what does that mean? Well, most businesses receive invoices from their suppliers, and a lot of businesses still have people that are manually reviewing those invoices, making sure that they're correct, making sure they're accurate, and then manually rekeying them into a finance system or an ERP system. Well, our solution can automate that process. So typically an invoice will come in, we'll use capture technology to understand what's on that invoice. We'll then match that data up against goods received note to make sure that we've received the product. We'll match it up against purchase order data to make sure that somebody has placed an order for that product. And ultimately, if we can match that up, we can automatically push that into an ERP system or finance system, and nobody has to touch it. How good does that sound? If there are exceptions, if there are things that need to be checked, that's fine. We can use digital workflow to push that to somebody to eyeball it and say, is this correct or does something need to change? Ultimately, though, that can then be pushed again into an ERP system or a finance system. This is about making your life easier. It's about making operations as quick and as efficient as possible. And we do that all the time. If that sounds interesting, then get in touch. That's enough from me. Back to the podcast.
Yeah, so there's the stuff we've shipped that isn't currently in active development, and then there's always going to be change requests and little bits, features dropping in. So there's like a team dedicated to that work as well, because the worst thing you want to do is to get a client invest hundreds of thousands in a solution from you. You ship it, and then they use it for a couple of months, and they come back and say, right, this is great.
Some more
Next,
stuff.
so you're at the back of the queue now. Sorry, you're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
It took us a while to work out a way to cope with that properly as well.
Yeah.
It was just, we tried loads of different
that team
ways.
has moved off onto something else.
Yeah.
So they're in a completely different domain now. We
That slips into another team.
And that would be like, well, there's a whole ramp up phase for that team. And so, yeah, we now have like a dedicated change request team, which seems to be our best approach for it now.
Cool. Yeah. I'm guessing growing a business as quick as you have, really, in 7 years, it's not a long time to go from not much to 40 people. Has there been some growing pains along the way? Are there things that you think that you challenges, I guess?
Biggest one is getting me and Jon off the code, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, and Matt as well.
Yeah.
Having 3 founders who write code was hard work, getting them, because it's easy to fall into the trap of, well, everyone's busy, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
Or I know how to do that, I can do it really super quick. And it doesn't bother anyone else from all their other tasks that they've got on. So yeah, that's taken about 7 years for us to extract.
You say fast as well, but I don't know. I would sort of look at it as being quite slow growth. It doesn't appear that from externally, but certainly internally, well, not internally at Source, but in the industry, there was a lot of pressure of, as soon as you get that first, second, third big client, you need to get investment, higher, grow and grow and grow. But we always, because we're developers at heart, we were always worried about the machine that builds the code and refining that, refactoring that, and coming back to it. So we would have points of we'd maybe grow another team, and then just sit at that level for a while we learn how we act as a free team company opposed to a 2. And so there was little blips. And
we have been advised by people to say, right, just get people in and put bums on seats, it'll be fine. And I'm kind of glad we have never done that, because I just think we've grown, we've got a really nice group of people that work with us, and it just works really well for us in that sense. So, if we just ramped up and put in lots of random people, I have no idea what the culture of Source would look like right now. But we've got people, employees that go on holiday together, things like that. We wouldn't have that if we had just put bums on seats. It would be a very different business.
Probably a lot more onboarding, offboarding as well.
Yeah,
more.
Yeah,
transient.
Yeah, we had phases of like really low churn rate on employees. Obviously, sort of lockdown, COVID changes that, because companies in London are going, well, we can hire from anywhere and double everyone's wages. Obviously, that period has calmed down a lot now as well. But yeah, I think we've had a really good culture in the business because of the way we've built it.
So you've grown from our side of things, quickly in 7 years. steady, controlled from your side.
I didn't say
Steady.
controlled.
Okay, all right, steady then. What's the vision? Where do you want to take Sauce?
Got Mr. Sales.
Yeah, we're trying a few things out at the moment. We've got one client who has the potential to grow really big and looking for investment or further investment at the moment. So but that's a difficult one because that's their business. I mean, we're heavily linked with them, and so we're doing all their development. So, but it's kind of up to them.
Yeah.
If that takes off, and we'll be there to support them. But also we're looking at productizing some of the work we've done around with some of the clients. So the Nestle example is a good one. One of the reasons we went to the multimodal logistics show was to kind of present ourselves as a product company, whereas the week before we went to the manufacturing conference where we were a consultancy, and it was really interesting to see the different reactions to the stall, because it was we were branded differently, different messaging. The consultancy, you just got everybody with all their problems, and they were great problems, and really varied. Whereas when we put the messaging out, right, this is our yard solution, there was still quite a variety of different yards. It was mainly, those sort of big distribution warehouses, trucks in, trucks out, and then there was airports saying, we got a lot of freight coming in this door, and trucks picking up.
Wow.
There's ports who have got, it's the same problem, but in 3 dimensions when you're stacking your containers. So we're looking at that at the moment to see but we know that that's a totally different business model. So we have to be careful that we don't cannibalize the consultancy. We have to ring fence any developers that are on that side. But having already built the majority of that product, hopefully that will help.
So from your 2 sort of exhibitions where you've been exhibitors, what were you surprised with the sort of traffic that you got to the stall? Did it exceed expectations? Is it something you thought, right, we've done it a couple of times, quite happy with it, we're going to carry on, that's going to be one of our marketing strategies?
Yeah, we haven't decided yet, because we'll see how much of these leads turn into real leads, and how much were just people who were, having a nice day out, and enjoying
interesting conversations,
enjoying some chats, So we'll see, but it definitely opened our eyes into the problems that are out there, and how we would approach a company, say, a little more colder now, knowing what we've learned from those conferences.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because when you touched upon some of the problems that you've solved with some of the sort of blue chip names that you work with, one of the things that I do, I said earlier, I'm not overly technical, but my role really is to open the door, manage the process, understand the business case, etc., which I've covered. But it's also to tell stories, factual stories. But once I've helped someone in a particular sector, I'm then looking for their competitors, really, to then say, look, I've helped them. You'd be mad not to, because they're now working this way more efficiently in these areas. And sounds like you're on that same journey. And also, I suppose the reason I chirped in now was actually when you start understanding the problems, that helps build your picture that you can then paint for them to say, look, I know those problems, and we can help you in those areas. And then suddenly you get, certainly for you going forward, you get those tie-ins. They're like, yeah, they know our business, they know our issues. The fact that they know them and they're not just chucking darts gives them confidence, doesn't it, to develop that conversation.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see so there's a lot of in multimodal, there's a lot of logistics companies there. It's kind of their showpiece, bit of a annual party for them all. They're not so much there to collect business, although I'm sure that happens, but it's the companies around it that was interesting, and just seeing the numbers in different problem areas. So tax, duty, imports, to loads of software over that. So that's obviously a huge problem right now. But also you look at that and think, well, we'll stay away from that, because that's covered. Yeah, that market is every other store seemed to be But then the problems that people come into, and you look around, nobody else is looking at that. Shipping containers was a really interesting one. Like, there was companies who were just like, do you have any data on yards and opening hours? Because that would be really valuable to us. And if anyone can collect that data, they'd be able to sell it. Because there's just a shortage of space to leave empty shipping containers, and there's a surplus in the UK right now, so much so that people will give you a shipping container for free if you transport it to a port of which there is a shortage, which is a great business model, isn't it? Like, sell your product for free and then they transport it for you, and then you get to sell it for a better price once it's arrived.
Crazy. Right, the podcast is called Tomorrow's Workplace Today, so we always ask our guests to cast their mind forward 10 years. What does the workplace of 10 years' time look like? Who wants to go first?
I mean, if you're doing it from a development point of view, which is basically where my head's always at as a CTO, it's clearly going to be a lot of AI involved, right? I mean, you'd be mad to think after the last 6 months that there isn't going to be a lot of AI involved in terms of not just purely developing AI tools, and there's obviously every man and their dog trying to do that right now. Some good, some really awful. But actually just efficiencies. That's really been our focus, I think, when we've been looking at AI, around how do we make the world of development more efficient. I'm not talking about putting people out of work, that sort of efficiency. There's loads of just little jobs all the time that just need doing as a developer, things you do every day. Well, let some AI do that for you. Or, similar problems, like you're trying to remember like some documentation in your head about system X, Y, Z. Well, Google's okay, but if you can search with context, which is basically what you're doing with ChatGPT, it's a much more efficient way to be doing those searches, those lookups. So I think, you'd be mad to sort of say anything but AI, I think, at the moment, in terms, especially in our world. Developers are going to be, I guess the term is prompt engineers, the cool term right now. That's definitely going to be a big thing. You have people like, 5-10 years ago, you had people that seemed to be able to get really good results out of Google with the being able to write the correct search terms. So you're going to have a similar thing with AI. People can write good prompts versus people that don't know how to write good prompts. So you're going to see different quality of outputs. But the world of development is going to be a very collaborative world of some AI, some humans, because there's no way that any form of natural language processing is going to help a client write a piece of software from scratch. I think I read something probably about 4 months ago in The Guardian where basically somebody said, developers, your secret's out. We know how to, anyone can now build whatever you've been doing for years. It's like utterly ridiculous statement. Never going to happen, right? But AI is going to help and speed things up. That's what will happen. Things will be more efficient.
And are you using AI in client projects at the minute, or is it more of an internal tool?
We do use not directly on projects in the sense of writing machine learning kind of algorithms for projects or as such, but that will happen. That will start to happen for us. We will have projects around that, but it will be it's more just like writing code. So writing rinse and repeat code where you can just you just solve a problem. You know how to do it sort of in your head, but you just can't write the right line of code that you need. And you just say to ChatGPT or to GitHub Copilot, this is what I want, do it for me. Then you look at it, it produces something semi-useful, and then,
refine it from there.
You refine it from there, because there's no way it's writing, as much as that Guardian article wants to tell me that it writes perfect code. It's awful code, most of it, but it's a starting point. It's pair programming. That's basically what it is. It's your pair programming with a junior or a semi-experienced mid-level, not production quality.
It is at the minute. I guess the argument would be, in 5 years' time, will it still be?
No, it'll get better. Probably what will really happen is you'll end up with really a much more limited number of languages that are being focused on by developers, because you get better results out of AI in terms of when I give it the prompts, I get better results for language X instead of language Y. So you'll find, and probably it'd be really interesting to see what happens in the world of JavaScript, because obviously there's no compiler involved, right? So there's a lot more kind of throw it up, and it's a scripting language ultimately, but those compiler-based languages, which give you run your compiler, and getting really nerdy here. You run your compiler, it tells you the errors. You can throw those errors straight back into your AI bot of choice, and it'll go, "Oh, this is how you fix it." So I suspect you'll see a lot more people going back to more compiled languages. I'll stop being really nerdy there.
Good answer. I like that. We've not had that one before, but I like it. Jim.
What Jon said. Yeah. Yeah, it's very hard to sort of. There's an Office of the future that I'd like to see, and then there's what we'll probably see, which will be not too dissimilar from what we got now, because I think we just move quite slowly. Although it looks like things change, but actually society doesn't. In 10 years, it's not a huge jump in time.
That's a fair point.
I'd like to think we've all got our AR headsets on, and we're sitting on a beach doing office work, and perhaps we're only working 2 or 3 days a week, and everyone else is on universal income because you need to work if you want to be creative. But I don't think that will happen in 10 years. I hope it does. But on the AI side, what's going to be really interesting is how new recruits to the industry adapt it, and whether we're at the sweet spot at the moment where you have a lot of people who have the knowledge of how to develop, and so they can pick up what's wrong and what's right about the code that's generated, and it's really good. We did a little experiment in an afternoon where we took a brief from a client we had years ago. We never did the project because it was more of here's a great app idea, you should build it sort of thing. And in between meetings in an afternoon, I just on a framework I've not used before, just used ChatGPT to build it for me, and it from everything from deployment, setting up a database, finding a free host, and within about 4 hours it was up and people were using it.
Maybe that Guardian article was right.
But so I obviously had the context of years of development behind me, so I knew what questions to ask. When we asked one of our QAs who had done a little bit of test scripting and stuff like that, but not really done much development, they got stuck in a lot of loops. So how do we make sure that people coming into the industry get that grounding, almost like slugging away first and working out for yourself to become somebody who can then interact efficiently? And it, when it works, you feel like a conductor. You're just sitting there with commands, and I had a sleepless night when one of the updates happened, and it just tweaked something for ChatGPT. Tweaked something in my head, and I was sort of like, I can do this, and I was trying to set up a little trigger with voice recognition so I could just talk the commands to get it really fast. And actually the speed of it was really frustrating. I even though I knew that I couldn't type as fast as it was outputting, it wouldn't be as accurate, I was still a little bit like, come on. So yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years, but it'll be interesting. What
are your thoughts on the fact that we've got, granted this sounds like, AI, ChatGPT, taking on board what you both said, is going to evolve. When customers start saying, well, if you're using AI and you're using ChatGPT, I want it cheaper.
I mean, they should absolutely expect that. That's, more efficient means cheaper and the price of software will come down, which is a good thing, because then those little problems that we spoke about earlier, which are really interesting but aren't worth solving, so all of a sudden that price has come down. Yeah. And as a business, there is a little bit of a disconnect between, well, if the coding's faster, then the whole project should be faster. But the other parts of the project, which are at least 50% of it, the organisation, the planning,
testing,
is it going to speed all that up?
I'm going to count on that. I'm not entirely certain it's definitely going to drop in. There'll be a bit drop off maybe, but not masses. I mean, wait.
It's like a board meeting, wait.
But you still need people to know how to ask the questions correctly, right? You still need somebody to look at it and know, okay, does this code scale? You know, yeah, sure, somebody in the back bedroom can write a piece of code for an IoT device. Will it scale to millions of devices where you can capture all that data and then learn what you can do with that data? No way, absolutely no way. So you're still going to pay a premium for quality work.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, that's if you ask, like, the market expands and you've got more, you know, freelancers, programmers that can hit the market, but the existing market should be able to write more code.
Yeah.
In less time, which should drive the price down or increase the amount of features you can have for your budget.
Let's favour the second part.
You see the business development people.
Yeah,
See.
Yeah, you still got there's a value to the training, the expertise that you've developed, and in being in sales, obviously you want to sell it for as much as you can for for whatever you're doing. So if you can do it more efficiently, get the same amount, but actually then bring in the bits that normally would have been out of reach.
Yeah.
Then you
exactly. They can have a more refined product at the end of it because they've got more availability of time. Essentially, the budget is still the same, but they've got more value for it.
Yeah,
but it's too expensive for a lot of problems still, and it needs to be. So the App Store is a really good example of, there was a boom 10, 6, 7 years ago. Everyone had an app out there, and. There was lots of great apps out there, but now everyone has realised you can't really afford. Like, nobody wants to pay 99p for an app you use once a month, even though it's insanely cheap. And they'll pay £2 for a coffee or something. I don't know. Well, how much is a coffee these days? Don't drink coffee.
It's a mad thought process, isn't it? The amount of people that just want a free version of something instead, and they'll watch ads rather than pay 99p. It's 99p, people. Wake up.
It's a weird. So there are lots of free services, or who initially have been free, and now they're trying to claw their investment back.
Yeah.
We've got a load of drama going on Reddit at the moment, who are sort of following Twitter's playbook of raising the drawbridge of the API, and the Apollo developer. I don't know if you've seen this, the bill that he's facing. But per user is like $7,000 a month based on their API usage. It's just insane. So all of that stuff, it's still working its way out, figuring it out in the market on how you can make everyday solutions affordable to people, but also fund the development of it. So,
maybe AI.
Maybe AI will help that a little bit, but also people just need to value software, I think, a bit more. Absolutely. And if you
that's exactly it. Yeah, value software more, value your data more.
Yeah, and you don't need 70 apps on your phone. You probably only use 8 constantly.
Definitely guilty of that one.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave it there. Jim, Jon, thank you very much for coming on. I have to say I've worked in the kind of tech industry around here for a long time, and you guys have got an incredible reputation, both amongst customers and in terms of colleagues as well. So
thank you very much.
Keep doing it, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.